Botcasters number 63 today with Amira Chalbi Neffati. Welcome, Amira.
Thank you, Doran. I'm really happy today to discuss about a very interesting topic.
Now, we met in Edinburgh at the European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit. And but there's something we talked about there, just before the dinner. And that struck me. That's why I invited you, because I think you made an important point, and that needs to be out there. There's this whole discussion of AI in the workplace and the impact it has on people, or might not have, and what are we looking at. So it's a bit of it might be a bit of a philosophical discussion, because what are we working towards or to? But in the discussion, I would also like to see the impact on the consumer or the end users, the customers of the companies that use it. So it's because we know happy workers or happy employees give happy customers. What if the employee is not happy because of AI, or is happy because of AI, or despite of AI? That could also be the case. So there's this chain, and I would like to look at that, because I think we see more and more applications of AI internally, and that does something. So I have a vision on this, and I'll share it. And my vision is that AI is not going to replace, we're not going to lose jobs. We're going to have a whole series of new jobs, and we're going to have a lot of people that will have to retrain or uptrain and learn how to do their work with the assistance of AI. What we will see is that people are going to be pushed to be more productive. And that's where my real concern is, because we already see so many burnouts of the younger generation, because they work so many hours. You see them in medicine, doctors, NHS, same as in Holland. And I think if we use AI for good and increase productivity, and not make life easier, I think we end up with more people being more stressed out and not having achieved anything. So I think there needs to be a balance, and I don't know where it is, but that's my view. So now, up to you.
Yeah, so I 100% align with your opinion about the fact that I'm not concerned about AI taking jobs. It will for sure disrupt many jobs in a way that the way how employees used to do a particular job will evolve, will change. AI will take part of the tasks that employees used to do, and employees would have to shift their skills and focus on different tasks because AI will take part of this task. And the promise that we hear all the days is that AI will take all these repetitive kind of boring tasks that employees used to do, and AI will let employees focus on more creative, consumer-focused, quality-focused tasks, with AI taking these more repetitive tasks. And I think the big question will then be, what would be the impact of AI in the way how jobs will be evolving and changing? So you mentioned that it will be about upskilling employees, reskilling some of them to move to different kinds of jobs. And I think more importantly, as you mentioned, is with this promise of AI taking part of the tasks, we may fall in the trap of now expecting more to be done by employees, because we can simply say to them, we have taken part of your tasks with automation, so now you are supposed to do more elaborated tasks. But I think what we should keep in mind is, if we just take this simple equation of AI will be taking the more repetitive classical types of tasks, then naturally what would be remaining for employees to do will be the more complex tasks, the questions that are very specific, that are dependent on every customer or every question that customers have. So that would imply that employees would need to spend more time on these remaining tasks, because these are tasks that could not be automated because they are too complex, too specific. These are tasks that sometimes need to also have a lot of empathy, to spend some time to understand the customer needs, sometimes their feelings, the problems they are facing. And so I think we should be very cautious about the fact of expecting more productivity, and also see that with taking some tasks, we are also adding more responsibility and more complexity to be handled by employees. And that's why, for example, I keep asking questions around, within the introduction of AI, are we expecting also to see a shift in the way how we used to evaluate the performance of employees, the way how we used to measure the time employees spend on each task, because now we have a human employee and we have a virtual employee, which is AI, but the human employee is meant now to be handling more complex tasks. So we should not keep evaluating them, for example, in the context of customer service, which is the field I'm working on currently. We should not keep evaluating them on the time they spend on interaction, because it's natural. If you give me as an agent more complex task, then it's natural that I will spend more time doing that task, right? So yeah, just to conclude, I think, as you mentioned, there is this risk of over expecting from employees to be more productive, because we gave them this promise that now we have a virtual employee helping you, so you should be more productive. But we should also give them tools to handle this shift in the way how they are doing their work. And I have recently read a report from McKinsey exploring this topic, about the fact that we should not tackle the question of AI in the workspace only from the productivity perspective, but should be thinking about, in addition to giving the employees these tools that would automate part of their job, what do they need beyond like the practical tools. And their conclusion was that employees would need more support for decision making, for empathy, for soft skills, because they will be handling the more complex tasks.
This is really interesting. Please, when we post this, put a link to that report
Yes, sure.
in the post underneath, so people can look at the report. There's two things in here. One, I know there's a lot of people that actually feel perfectly comfortable and happy doing those administrative, repetitive tasks. They're happy, and they do it from 9 to 5. It pays the bills, and that's it. And for the rest, they do whatever they want. So I'm a bit worried for those people that they don't want to reskill, they don't want to uptrain or whatever. They just want to do what they did. If all the companies are moving AI in their companies doing those tasks, what will happen to these people? That's one concern. I don't have an answer, but it is a concern. So maybe you have thoughts on this. And the other one is, um, you're actually saying there's an ethical consideration vis-a-vis employer employee while introducing AI. What other impact does it have? What does it do mentally or physically or whatever um, to to the employee? And there was I don't know if you saw him in Edinburgh, Ali Fenwick, Professor Ali Fenwick
Yeah.
he works in he's a professor in Dubai. And actually, he said, I also had it in my podcast, he said that if you don't, no, from the perspective of the consumer, if you don't treat your employees well, that is going to affect your business. And if you introduce AI, and eventually, if the consumer sees that or hears that or feels that, um, will consumers eventually, won't they make a choice for a company that does it ethically if the price is the same? And maybe it's wishful thinking, I don't know. But I would hope that society in general, at large, would do that. Although people usually go to the lowest price, or um, so if money or profit is the biggest driver of the company, well, how will that impact the choice they make vis-a-vis their employees? If being an ethical company that treats their employees well and their customers well, that probably leads to different decision making vis-a-vis introducing AI in your company. And my question is, how do you think we get these companies that are driven by short-term results needed for shareholders, right? Short-term profits. How do we get them to move to the ethical space where they introduce AI or use AI in an ethical way so that their employees are actually happy employees and that people feel welcome and supported and empowered by AI, because we can do that. We can empower employees using AI instead of replacing them. So how do we get these companies to understand that that is the moral high ground is in this case actually the better one?
I think let's start with the first, I would say, fact. I think we should not be unrealistic and think about the motivation behind automation or introducing AI be outside of the need to reduce costs, to have more efficiency, operational efficiency. So this is something that we should face, right? Is that the reflection and motivation for automation has among its key motivators for businesses the cost reduction and being more efficient, which is I would say something that you can tolerate and you can respect, that every company needs to reduce costs and be efficient. So
Can
with
I ask you one
considering
question?
this, mhm,
Amir, well, sorry
mhm,
to interrupt you, but there's two ways to approach that. That if you say as a company, listen, we want to grow, but we want to serve a larger amount of customers or more calls with the same amount of staff, and not making the workload higher, but just being more efficient. We don't want to fire anyone. We just want to grow without having our costs grow.
yeah,
That is I think that's an ethical way of looking at introducing
yes,
AI, etc. The other one is where if a company starts with, okay, I have, I don't know, 500 people in the call center and I want to reduce that to 250 within a year, so let's introduce AI. I think the second one is, first of all, it doesn't work that way, and it's not that easy.
yeah,
But secondly is the good people are also going to go. They're going to say a company that treats their staff this way is not a place where I want to work. So it's I think it's a disaster for your business. I understand companies have to cut costs at some point, but there's different ways to approach this.
yes, definitely. Yeah, this is what I was intending to come to. I think one of the key points that companies that would want and have the motivation to tackle this challenge around automation ethically is not jumping right away to the easiest solution, which is, if we want to reduce cost, let's just think about reducing workers number, and for that we will just use automation or AI as an excuse to say we introduced AI, so now we have the permission to reduce our number of workers because now AI can do many of that. So I think the problem, and I think that was of the points that we discussed during the AI summit, is that one of the problems I see that also contribute to the concerns and even the fear that workers have around AI is that many businesses are misusing AI as a pretext, or automation in general as a pretext to just reduce the number of workers. So to me, the problem here is the way how you first define the problem you are trying to solve with automation, and then the way how you are thinking about the solution. And in this example, you can see that companies has jumped to right away to a solution, and the solution that they had in mind, it's not a solution that was well thought. Versus if you think about it from a higher perspective and look at your problem from the lens of, we have a number of employees that we would like to keep. We would like to also give opportunity for them to upskill, to evolve. But at the same time, we have this constraint that everyone has within the current market, which is cost. Everyone is looking into different ways to reduce cost, to be more efficient, and it's a legitimate motivation, right? So you start looking at the problem from this perspective, and then you think about ways you can reduce costs, and automation can be one of the ways, right, to reduce costs, because you may want to have the same number of employees but have them treat the more complex problems and then leave the simplest tasks to AI as much as you can. And so I think one of the ways and steps towards thinking about introducing AI in your workspace in an ethical way is not to see AI as a replacer for employees, but think about how you can use AI as a way of empowering, augmenting the capacities of your workers so that you can do more, but with less efforts and workload or your employees, because you will delegating part of their tasks to AI. And I think the second part is to think while introducing AI, should not, as a business, think that the path towards adopting AI will be as simple as you may think for every employee. So there are two questions about AI. We will be introducing it. So there is the adoption phase where every employee needs to have their way of getting used to have AI being part of their workspace, the way how they will be now considering AI as also like a virtual colleague that they will have within the workspace, so how they would like conceive a structured way of delegating part of their tasks to AI while being always seen as an important part of the team. And then you have the long-term use of AI, right? So I think if businesses would like to have AI being also used effectively in their workspaces, they need to involve the employees in this process of starting to introduce AI and then adopting it and thinking about how it will be impacting in the longer term their work. So I think the key element here is to keep the employee in the loop within the different steps of introducing AI in the workspace. Otherwise, if as a business you will kind of impose the usage of AI, you will not get the results that you are expecting, because it's not about introducing a tool in the workspace, but also making sure that employees are effectively using it and using it in the long term. And so I will reference the second interesting research about this topic. So there was a really great research paper that was published last year called Generative AI at Work. Maybe you heard about this. A great research where they studied the impact of introducing generative AI tools in a contact center context on the way how different agents did their job of customer support. And they also compared that with other studies that studied the use of the GitHub Copilot. And an interesting point was that for the second study that studied the use of the Copilot, the GitHub Copilot, only around 50% of the developers adopted it in the long term. See, so it's not a matter of introducing a tool, but also a matter of how your employees will be using the tool and will they adopt it in the longer term.
But there's one thing that sort of kept not bugging me, but popping up in my mind. If you think about this strategically, right, and a company that needs to cut costs now actually didn't prepare for the tough times. You know what I mean? So the question is, how is this company managed? Are these people actually fit for the job, or are they only acting when it's already actually too late? It's not too late, but it's late, and as a consequence, it has impact on the employees. Mm-hmm. So, should companies that are doing really well, should they start experimenting with AI in the workplace, and that it's not a threat because they're really doing well? There is no need to cut costs right now, because it's all about added value or business value you create, because happy employees is business value. So should companies start much earlier, and actually when things are going well and they have no problem with cost and generating sales, experimenting and getting ready for the more difficult times, where they're able with the same amount of people to grow, so not having to lay one off, but grow without having to invest or increase the cost, whereas you are more competitive. That is a consequence. You understand what I mean? So what I see is that a lot of companies are doing this really late and then doing things fast and with a lot of impact. Of course, laying off people. Those are the people with the knowledge you actually need to create, to do good things with AI, because you need the knowledge of those people. But if you kick them out, it's also expensive to hire them back if business is better. And your AI is not going to perform. So basically, you're going to waste money on AI, lay off the people that have the knowledge, and at the end, it's going to hurt you more than start early and invest consistently and build and grow. You understand the strategic imperative?
Yeah, so if I try to decompose your question on some themes. So the first theme that you mentioned is that what we are seeing mainly as motivators for automation, and more specifically AI, currently is this motivation around increasing productivity, reducing costs. And I agree with you that it shouldn't be the only motivator. It can be one of the key motivators, but not the only one. And I remember seeing somewhere an interesting set of questions that companies should ask when they will be thinking about, should we automate or should we introduce AI? So AI can be a way for you to do things that you used to do better, faster, or more effectively, and that can fall into the bucket of like increasing productivity and reducing costs, right? But it can also answer questions about what are the things that we are not able to do currently, we are not able to provide currently as a business in terms of products and services that AI may help us do, right? And so if we think about it from this perspective, the answer won't be simply, as you mentioned, just reducing the number of your employees, introducing AI, and then you will figure out maybe later that AI is not the solution for everything, and you will be losing the knowledge and skills of many employees that left your company. So if you think about automation or AI as a way not only for reducing costs, but as a way of innovating or augmenting your capacities as a company and also the capacities of your employees, then the shortcut answer won't be, I want to reduce the number of my employees, but it will be considering the assets that I have as a business, but also considering the expertise that I have within my employees, how AI can help me augment my business, how AI can help me within the market create new opportunities and create new products and services that I wasn't able to provide 5 years ago. So yeah, I think the key point here is to stop looking at AI within this very short-term lens and very hyper-focused lens on reducing costs and productivity, and see AI in general as a way of expanding your way of thinking about your business in general and expanding the possibilities you can have within your business to create new opportunities, new businesses, and even to disrupt completely the way how you used to run your business and think in the mid and long term, how would also the evolution of the technologies that is not happening now, but it will happen in few months or few years. How would that transform your business, and how can you imagine your business within these upcoming changes?
So basically, what you're saying, and we agree on this, um, introducing AI in your business in whatever shape or form is a long game, not a short-term game.
Yes,
Because first of all, the investments are
definitely.
considerable.
Yes,
Um,
definitely. So,
so
and that makes me remember we once invited Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, in a conference in my company at Twilio, and he mentioned some interesting thoughts about AI that kept resonating in my mind, and I think that summarized well this idea of thinking about AI not for a very short-term needs, but also as an enabler to think in a very disruptive manner. He mentioned that as a business or as a company, you should not think about how you can introduce AI with what you have already as capabilities. And what we see currently, for example, is that many new startups or company would resume their business value around like using APIs that would use the existing models and just augment these existing capabilities. So you are just incrementing or sometimes duplicating what's existing within these models, and you are basing your business on what's existing now. And what he said is that what businesses should be focusing on and creating their business on is imagining what would the technology allow us to do in few months or few years, and then base your strategy and business on these future capabilities and not on the current ones, because the current ones may be very obsolete. In few weeks or months, it can be already something that is very obsolete. So I think, yeah, this is a manner of thinking about how can you build something that is relevant to the current market, but also making sure that it will be future proof for
here's
the way how technologies would evolve.
it's a very interesting thought. Having said that, but should any company that or any board that is busy with formulating their strategy, looking ahead, my opinion is they always should think about, okay, what product or products or services can we imagine, even if we don't have it now, and it's not even possible, that will replace what we have in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time. And that's when we need to start building it now, because we know it's going to happen. We don't know exactly how, but if we start building, we learn what doesn't work, and we get ready for the future. And I see AI and everything that happens around it as an enabler of that. Not it shouldn't be the target. Otherwise, what you said earlier is like AI is not the solution to everything. It's not every if AI is a hammer, not every problem is a nail. Like you don't always need a hammer. It could be a screw, or you need a screwdriver. So the point I'm trying to make is if you don't look ahead and really look ahead in your strategy and think about, okay, what can we do to disrupt our own business and making sure we get that business, and what does AI allow us to do already now, even though we thought it wasn't possible yet, because AI, it's developing so fast and all the technology around it, that everything you think of now, there's some stuff we can't even imagine. It's probably already happening somewhere, but it's not in our system to think of, okay, that. So I see it as an enabler. But the problem is the investments are so high that even though it's an enabler, you can't replace it every year. So I think there's going to be sort of a challenge in terms of the speed at which new technology will be adopted, because there'll be maybe the very big companies can do it, but the implementation time and the results, it's too difficult, and there's too little people available with enough knowledge to do it, and because it's also new. So my concern is there's going to be a lot of great technology around it, but it's going to lag in terms of implementation, and we see that already now.
Yes.
A lot of companies are experimenting with AI, but especially internally. We don't see that many, for instance, AI-driven chatbots, and the ones that we see the use cases that it went south, like Canadian Airlines and DHL. And actually, these were stupid mistakes. They were not necessary. They could have been, those mistakes could have been blocked in the system, I presume. So someone, made a mess. And I think that's the biggest concern for people in the lead or in charge of the companies, because they know so little about it that they consider it a bigger risk than it probably is if done properly. And that's why I think part of the technology, they'll invest in something. Okay, we understand this, we know how it works, and then it'll be there for a couple of years, and then we'll go to the next thing. You see that in conversational AI also. There's still a lot of chatbots with intents and utterances. It makes no sense. With generative AI, we can do a lot better. Yet we still have most chatbots that say or answer, "I don't understand you, please rephrase." Right? And from a customer service perspective, that sort of blows my mind, because we can do better.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting a very important point, which is there is a disconnect between the technological advances and the trends that we are seeing currently and the reality of many businesses still lagging even to get a certain point in their digital transformation, even without talking about AI. There are many companies that are still figuring their way to migrate to cloud, to have a certain level of even like simple automation within their companies without even thinking about the very advanced models that we have currently about generative AI. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, chatbots are a very relevant example where chatbots have been here now for many years now, and even AI in general have been now the research and industry for many years. And the problem that I think we are facing now is that we have a set group of companies that are able to join the race and be able to shift very quickly to new technologies and shift their stack to the most recent models, introduce, for example, generative AI in their chatbots. But the rest of companies are still lagging behind, are still figuring their way in general for digital transformation. So there is a big gap and big disconnect between what's happening in terms of experimentation and what's happening at scale, how companies are able to adopt these technologies. in production and have them running at scale. And I remember in the summit, someone mentioned that that's being also reflected on the side of end customers. So some of them are now expecting every chatbot to be based on ChatGPT, to be able to manage conversations in the same way as ChatGPT does. So it's a challenge, I think, because many end customers will now see generative AI as the norm, as a standard, and they will expect every single business to be delivering to them chatbots or other conversational interfaces that are at the level of ChatGPT, but the reality is not true. So many companies are still using very basic tree-based chatbots.
Can I
But
say
I
something
think,
about that?
yeah.
About
Mhm.
the interesting thing is tree-based or flow-based chatbots. They're not necessarily a bad thing if you want to have
Yeah.
a predictable process, and especially for transactional chatbots. The customer, I gave a lecture yesterday about it. If a customer comes somewhere for a transaction, he expects or she expects a flow that guides him or her through the transaction as fast as
Mhm.
possible, as efficient
Yeah.
as possible, with the least amount of friction. Um, that does not mean you should have chit chat and all that. No, ask me the question, I'll give you the information, next phase, etc., etc. And having a tree-based bot or a flow-based bot works perfectly, and you get
Yeah.
exactly what you expect, and every time it's the same. So there's no, in terms of maintenance, it's a safe way of making things, but you also manage expectations at the customer level. I would see a combination where you have flow-based bots or processes. Let's put it that way, where you start off with a generative AI-based bot that picks up on, okay, what does the customer want, and we suggest a process or flow to do it as efficient as possible, where you combine the flow-based bot with a generative AI bot, where you go from one to the other, and then if you're done, you go back, and if it doesn't want anything, fine, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be my assumption for the brave new world we're entering.
I 100% agree on that. And I don't know if you remember, but there have been some case studies shared this during the Chatbot Summit where many businesses are currently combining both, like classical models plus generative models to both take the advantage of having generative models and their capacity of parsing like big amount of data in few seconds, but then they are mitigating the risk of this uncertainty of generative AI, sometimes hallucinating or generating irrelevant content by giving the task of generating the final answer that would be delivered to the user to a classical model. So, and I think what I wanted just to highlight is that we may face some like deceptions from the perspective of end customers because they are now expecting a certain level of conversational experience that they used to have with ChatGPT that they are expecting for the other chatbots, even though, as you mentioned, if we see the main goal of me as an end customer coming to chat with a chat bot of a bank or retailer is to answer my questions, right? And to get my transaction being completed. But I think customers may also expect more and more advanced ways to interact with these chatbots that they won't see in every single chatbot. But the second point that you are highlighting that is very important here to mention is we should not fall into this trap of now seeing generative AI as the unique solution for every single use case. Because first, we used to solve many of these problems even before generative AI being now very accessible and getting to very advanced levels of capacities. And second, which is to me the most important point to keep in mind, generative AI has costs. It has computational costs, it has environmental costs. So we should not take it as granted and apply it everywhere without thinking about optimizing different solutions and having generative AI where it is really relevant and where we cannot replace it with other models.
Yeah, it's interesting. Before you said we could replace repetitive tasks with AI, but if you look at certain processes, like for instance financial services or I don't know, ordering books, what have you, a lot of the steps and the type of data you put in is the same. So that's a standardized process. If it's a standardized process, you do not need AI because actually it'll hurt more than it brings. Because if we ask the customer for a number and there's nothing nowhere else to get it, the number is the number. It's just data,
Yes.
and AI is not going to do anything to it other than take it from A to B. We can do that with a cheaper technology, and it's more well, not necessarily more secure, but it's more predictable
Yes.
because it does what it needs to do. It's like RPA, actually. But is it because everybody's hyping AI, the amount of conventions and summits about AI, we have to be honest, it's like it's popping up everywhere, online and live. And I think in companies, CTOs and marketing people say, "Oh, we need to do something with AI
Yeah.
because," and that's where the problem starts. People think it is the solution to all your problems. So how do we cool this down? How do we bring this back to the right perspective and having people understand like AI is a solution for a lot of things, but
Yeah,
don't hype it too.
I think the answer will be always start with the problem. Start with defining and knowing the problem that you are trying to solve before jumping to the solution, right? And this is really, as you mentioned, is becoming a problem, especially after all the hype that started to happen around generative AI. Is I have been visiting the contact center expo here in London, and I have been discussing with some solution providers. And many of them said that they are more and more seeing the trend of companies coming towards them and saying that you have AI without starting by asking, I have a problem. What are the solutions that you have for me? So many companies are here because they are seeing that everyone is talking about AI, even their competitors are starting to have AI. So they have this feeling or the urge to have AI somewhere in their services and products without necessarily knowing why.
FOMO.
And so we have, I think, the responsibility as solution providers, as advisors, as researchers, for my case, to start with preliminary question, which is what are the problems that I'm trying to solve? What are the pain points or challenges that my employees or that my business is struggling with? And then think about the solution. And then when you think about solution, start with levels of reflection. Should I adopt automation as a way of resolving this problem? If yes, how can I automate? Is it using machine learning, AI, or something else? So I think the answer is to start with very well defining your problem and then also making sure that you are tackling the reflection about solution in a multi-level approach where you avoid as much as you can to be biased with what everyone is talking about around AI is the answer to everything, and now generative AI is the answer to everything, and start looking at different ways you can solve this problem. Generative AI can be the perfect solution, as it cannot be. And also, I think for many cases, AI or generative AI can be solution, but you can find that other solutions can be better for different reasons, for cost reasons, for security reasons, for compliance reasons, etc. So by combining these different, I think, questions, you can find the best solution. That it can be AI or not, it can be generative AI or not.
So it's then a conclusion or a thought maybe that because of the hyping of AI, that a lot of the tech that is reliable and can do a job perfectly,
Yes.
is affordable and safe, is not even considered because we need AI. We want AI because the shareholders think we should use AI. So basically, everybody needs to land back on his feet and look at it from a strategic perspective. So it could be that in short term, having using traditional technology or already established technology for doing a job is perfectly fine. Understanding
Yes.
that at the same time we'll be experimenting how to do this with AI and see if we can make it more efficient, cheaper, whatever. But do not exclude regular tech to do things. That's the
Yes.
point you're making.
Yes.
But that's a
Absolutely.
strategical consideration, and so that needs to happen in the boardroom. They need to ask their employees, like, okay, it's really nice that you should come with AI, and that is a solution for a problem, and I understand the problem. What other solutions are there? Have you considered those? If they haven't, send them back to the drawing table because we need to compare, right?
Yes.
So how do we get the boardroom to do that? Because obviously they're not doing it since we see all this hype and I see all these companies that have a perfect solution or a good product, and they're rushing to introduce AI into their product or as a feature maybe, and it doesn't work properly, and customers get annoyed. So basically, they're wasting a really good product or service by adding AI to it. But it's and this FOMO thing, commercial FOMO, I would call it. Because if we don't have it, we're going to lose customers to a company that does the same and has AI. So they're introducing half-baked things, saying, "Oh, we're experimenting," and these customers get annoyed. I've heard a few stories of big companies introducing AI into their product suite, and it's not properly working. So actually, a consultant to one of these big companies for implementing this software said, "Well, usually you have to wait a year before you actually tell your customers to start using it." That's the thing. If a big company introduces a feature to their product and their implementation partners say, well, let's wait a year, see if it actually works. Because they
Yeah,
don't
I
want all
think
these
one of
disappointed.
the
Sorry.
sorry.
No, I said because they don't want all these disappointed customers where they promise stuff that the big company promised they can't deliver and they have to solve it, but they can't because the product isn't any good yet. I'm not saying it won't be any good, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, and I think we witnessed some shared experiences about that during the summit, where an insurance company shared that they introduced a generative AI within their chatbot, but they had to roll back very quickly because the experience wasn't as good as expected. And what they did now is that they are started beta testing it internally by developing an internal HR chatbot using the same technology. So I think,
I had the guy in my podcast,
yeah, I saw this
Harold.
podcast.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, that highlights one of the key answers to this question is to test and start testing it
And
like
build
in
the
a
competence.
more like closed environment, maybe internally as this insurance did, or maybe with some beta testing initiatives with a small group of customers, etc., to start testing these technologies in the wild. Because even though like I'm user experience researcher, we can use user testing sessions to use and test these technologies, but it's not always reflecting the full reality of introducing these tools in the wild for a bigger number of users with different profiles of users. So testing it would be one of the ways to reduce as much as possible the risk of introducing these very disruptive technologies on the quality of the customer experience. And the second thing is, so you mentioned how we can also help board members. I think it's a responsibility of different teams. For example, it's my responsibility as a researcher to help teams keep in mind this problem-driven way of thinking about introducing new technologies or new solutions to our customers. And it's the responsibility of every other teams to tackle this problem from their perspective. So, for example, from the engineering perspective, it's their responsibility also to show that AI can be the solution, but there are also other solutions, and then highlight how we can evaluate and compare different alternatives of solution and highlight what are the parameters that we can keep in mind while choosing the best solution from the perspective of the cost of computation, the performance, etc. So I think that the way to go with that is really to test, to compare, and to keep in mind that we should not always rush to be part of the race. Sometimes it takes you longer to join the race, but it's better than joining the race and then losing a big part of your customer experience because you didn't take the time to think about how thoughtful you were about introducing the solution and also what could be the impact of this solution. And I remember last year, a company that is managing holiday booking mentioning that they did the mistake of introducing, even before generative AI technology, so they introduced a chatbot to their customer service in a early premature way, and that impacted a lot their customer experience. They had to roll back and pause these chatbots, and now they will have more challenges and more difficulties to reintroduce again the chatbot because your customers are now having a past
Have a memory.
bad experience with chatbots, so you are making the adoption of this new chatbot harder to them because they had this in mind, this deceptive experience.
Can I ask your opinion as a researcher? Because there's always this dilemma if you bring out something new and you build an MVP and it works, or you think it works. But the most important thing with an MVP is to get feedback from your customers, right? And let's see, let's assume the chatbot, it's not the product, but it's a means to an end. Um, and you build one with generative AI or partly using generative AI. It's just, okay, we think it's good or good enough. What if you manage expectations and you ask a group of customers, not in a panel, but actually use your service with that product or with that chatbot, where you're honest, listen, we're still learning, it's new, you could make mistakes. We respect your feedback, we'll reward you for your feedback and the time you take to tell us. And you actually call these people after they have used the chatbot and you ask for feedback. How damaging is it then if it doesn't work properly? Because of course things will happen. We know it always does. So how damaging is that? Does it have the same effect as the one you mentioned before, or is that actually a constructive way of handling testing? But it's not testing; you're putting it live, but you're combining it.
Yeah, I think already mentioning to the customers that this chatbot is under testing and preparing them to expect that sometimes the chatbot may provide irrelevant information can help them tolerate the fact that these chatbots may sometimes handle
Make
not
mistakes.
well the conversation or may make mistakes. I think that would help them, but then you will always have some customers who would not necessarily tolerate the fact that you even introduce it to them a tool that is under testing or under improvement. But it definitely helps to prepare and be very transparent with your customers about the fact that you are introducing a tool that is still learning and improving by learning. But the risk will always, I think, be that what we call the false positives is that sometimes these chatbots or any other types of conversational interfaces may give the illusion to customers that they are giving correct information while they are not. So this is, I think, the bigger risk. And it may be the case, for example, of Air Canada. So the chatbot gave an information that is not correct, but it seemed to be correct from the perspective of the customer, and the customer used this incorrect information to think that they will be refunded. So I think this is the bigger risk, is that sometimes it's not clear or explicit to the customer that the chatbot is giving to them wrong information, and that may cause this deception or misleading information. And I think that's where many companies are very concerned about introducing these technologies in these cases where it's not explicit and clear enough to the customer that this information is not correct.
So besides the legal part, that's a different story. Being as transparent as you can to your customer, and I can imagine that you, for instance, if you're starting a chatbot screen or a little frame, conversation frame, where you say, okay, listen, we have two choices for you. You can either use the traditional chatbot. It works fine. We're experimenting with something new. Are you open to that? We reward people who try it and give us feedback at the end. We'll ask a few questions. Takes 2 minutes extra. I don't know, something like that. And what we always do, we check your conversation to see if there were incorrect statements. And if so, we need your email address. We might correct it and say, okay, it said something wrong. So if you manage expectations in that and you give the customer a choice to go left or right, old school or new school, in terms of research results, I haven't done this before like that, but I'm just trying to think of a solution how you get there, because we need to take away the fear of trying and experimenting. And my experience in a lab setting, you don't get the results from actual customers doing actual things. They always do things differently. When you do a lot of research, so you know that, at least I think you might have the same experience, that people are in a room together doing things behind. It's not the same when you sit behind your phone or your own computer. You're stressed. You need to do something, and you make mistakes or you do things differently. And my experience, you get the best feedback on your chatbot if actual customers do actual things and get stuck, and they tell you honestly, and you say, thank you for the change. We'll update you when we've changed it. Please come again. And you know what? They're really happy. They're not negative about the chatbot because they see the improvements they suggested. That, if you can. If you can't, explain them why not. Because that is part of the thing, being transparent. And I think that's also from this day and age, we need to be transparent.
Yes, definitely. I think we need to be transparent, whatever is the technology we are using behind these chatbots or other conversational interfaces. And I think generative AI in particular, it has this virtue of really delivering very advanced ways to manage a conversation with a human, very advanced ways of imitating how a human would manage a natural conversation. But on the other side, the cost of that is that it's very unpredictable and it's very uncertain. So I think the challenging part of starting to use these technologies in customer-facing interfaces will be to measure the risk of introducing them and be able to say that I'm confident that I can introduce it to my customers, and I know that there will be a certain risk, but it's a risk that still can be managed. And I remember I asked after the presentation of this insurance company, when do you think we'll be ready to say we are now confident to introduce again this generative AI chatbot to our customers, and their answer was don't know yet. And I think this is one of the challenges to teaching parts about generative AI, is this uncertainty and unexpectable, unexpected, unpredictable behaviors that are refraining many companies of introducing them, and even the companies that are like investing enough, like this insurance company, to test it. They have difficulty to assess a confidence level that would allow them to say that we are now ready to roll it back to our customers.
Yeah, but it makes perfect sense because if you don't know, and if as a board you're responsible, well, if we can't assess the risk, if we don't know, then we can't introduce because the risk of not knowing what we don't know. It's
Yes,
too high, and insurance is a
absolutely.
highly regulatory environment, so it's even more complex, like banks. So that's a different thing. But I understand, and I think it's up to all of us in the community to create that higher level of confidence and understand how to test such a thing in a good way where you don't risk your business, but you do get the proper results of
Yes,
what to change or
definitely.
what to change to. Yeah, that's why I asked about the testing. That would be a reasonable approach, and you say, well, the answer is yes, but under certain constraints.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think the dilemma here is that, as you mentioned, you won't have a testing that is reflecting the reality until you introduce this tool in the wild and let many customers interact with it and challenge it in a way. But at the same time, you have the risk of introducing it in the wild, of having some hallucinations or like misleading information that you will now after have to manage and sometimes to pay for, as is the case of Air Canada. Even though I think Air Canada chatbot wasn't based on generative AI, but it still is a very relevant example of how like you can have a high risk of introducing these technologies at scale. So I think it's and I keep thinking about it. How can we test and have testing results that are close to the reality without introducing it at scale? And how can we introduce it at scale while reducing the risk of having some bad user experience and even some compliance or privacy violations?
One of the things that I think I have a small part of the answer, not the whole answer, but I think a small part of the answer is, and that's based on my previous experience. A lot of company thinks, okay, let's introduce the whole shebang at once. Yeah, it needs to do this, that, and that, and it needs to have all that information. And that's hard, but what if you keep it really, really small with a manageable amount of information and manageable functionality, and we only do that. And once we have that working, then we add knowledge and functionality, and you build on top of that. This way, you have a stable base, and you expand every time on that stable base. And only when it's stable, when the next phase is stable, you bring in the next one and the next one. It will take you a bit longer to get there, but the big problems or the big issues, you don't get them because you get to solve the small things if you keep every increment relatively small. So for one insurance company, we did something with insurance products, and we added one or two products at a time. And by doing that, you get something that is controllable. By now, if someone would, it's aftercare on insurance products. If someone would have all the products, which nobody has, but if someone would have, there are, I think there's about 21 million possible combinations. There's no human that can do that. But if you think it looks very simple for the consumer, he says he doesn't see that, but he sees, oh,
Yeah.
I make a choice, and it's a structured chatbot, works like a charm, and it's always the same. If you have the same input parameters, you get the same output. that means every customer is treated equally, and that's what the governing bodies want. It needs to be fair and clear and transparent and predictable. So that it's no robo advice that changes its opinion after the model is updated, for example. That
Yeah,
is a problem.
yeah, and also I remember you may have also watched this presentation of the hospital in Scotland that started. The research team is in Scotland, but they started testing it in France, in a hospital in France, where they introduced a generative AI um, in a robot that interacts with patients in the waiting room. And so they mentioned that one of the ways um, they try to reduce the risk of hallucination, especially in this very critical context of medical interactions, is that they will prompt the bot not to talk about some specific topics. It may be also a way of kind of reducing the risk of um,
Going off topic.
going off topic, or even talking about topics that the chatbot shouldn't talk about, is to prompt them explicitly not to talk about these specific topics. But then again, that will be more complex if you expand the scope of your chatbot. So you need to expand also the number of prompts that you would give to them to avoid talking about some specific topics. But yeah, I think if you start with a very limited scope, and then you try to limit as much as possible the topics that the chatbots need to talk about, that may help reducing the risk.
Yeah, in the end, it may take a bit longer, but you reduce the risk. You also
Yes.
reduce the cost of rework. It's a very complex, big chatbot doing
Yeah.
rework on all of it. You don't know where to start and you don't know when it finishes. So I think you've de-risked it in all fashions, in all ways. If I could ask you for a last piece of advice or a tip to companies, thinking about introducing generative AI into their chatbot, or starting with, they don't have a chatbot, they want to start with something. I know you've said it before, but I think what would be the advice? Which steps should they take in which order?
Yeah.
Let
Maybe.
me start with one. First, start with the problem.
Yes, first and most importantly, start with the problem and understand well the problem that you are solving for, and then within the reflection on the solution, also be sure that you are aware of the different alternatives or possibilities you have from the perspective of like if we think about AI. So AI can be a way maybe of automating certain tasks, or now we are not even thinking about AI only for automation, but it can be also a way of augmenting creativity or being able to treat a number of data, etc., etc. So think about how you can translate your problems into some themes or like problem categories, then that would help you think about the better solution. So if your problem is about, for example, um, doing some tasks faster or more efficiently, then maybe automation is the right way to go, and then AI may be a solution or not. And so if within this whole process of defining a problem and then going with this, as we said, multi-level approach of thinking about the solution, you find out that generative AI is one of the solutions that you should consider within this solution theme around generative AI. Have a look on the different possibilities you can combine to create a solution based on generative AI. And I can cite here a great work that we also adopted internally at Twilio to help us reflect on the different possibilities that we can have to create with generative AI is a paper by researchers from Google and Meta called the design space of generative AI. So design space is a way that would help you think about the different parameters you can combine to create a solution based on generative AI. And the good thing about this paper is that it's not focusing purely on the technical side of creating a solution with generative AI, but most importantly, also how the human users will interact with your generative AI solution. So you can, for example, consider the ways how humans will give input and receive output from your generative AI solution. So we can think about text, which is the most evident way, but you can think about voice, images, and that would open up to you many perspectives in the way how you can create generative AI solutions where, for example, you can combine text and voice. You can combine also ways how you will be giving enough transparency. You are giving spaces for users to give feedback. So you will be thinking about how am I going to explain the results that I'm giving to them, maybe by giving to them the sources of information that I used, how I'm going to give to them the option to give me feedback about what they are seeing in terms of answers. Maybe I will just give them the option to like or dislike my answer, but maybe also I'll give to them the option to comment, to add more detailed feedback about my answer. So to conclude here, I think about the spectrum of solutions in general that may help you answer the questions you have and the problems you are solving for. And if you found that generative AI can be the solution or the solution for your problem, also be sure to explore the different design alternatives and solutions you can create within generative AI.
And probably one thing you didn't mention now, but you mentioned before, make sure to involve the staff.
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
Very
and this is
important.
why I insist on the fact that within the design of your solution, think about how to keep them in the loop in the way how you will be explaining to them the results you are showing to them, how you are going to give them space to give you feedback, and even to like make your system learn more from their feedback. So human in the loop, yes, is a part.
Thank you very much, Amira. And please share the the research papers you
Sure.
mentioned. Please share it, and I'll include it in the post. Thank you very much, and well, hope to see you next year in Edinburgh.
Thank you, Darren. Have a nice day.
And you.